As bad as Fox News is, folks, Fox News also sometimes lets people like Jesse Waters and Greg Gutfeld drip out a little bit of truth. I'm talking about voter fraud, mail-in ballots, ballot harvesting, all the things that have been taboo on Fox for way too long and on mainstream media for way too long. They've been in denial about what really happened in the 2020. Now, Jesse Waters is not only discussing what happened in the 2020, but he's throwing up red flags and uh, warning signals to the fact that they're going to do it again in 2024. That's why we got to beat them at the ballot box. We got to do our own harvesting where it's legal, and we got to encourage everybody we know to show up and vote. That is the main objective to getting this done. Now, there's people that believe we will get between 80 and 85 million votes for Trump without nefarious action going on. Now, how that figure changes after because of that swapping and all that stuff, I can't say, but it does look like Trump will win in a landslide if everything is on the up and the up. So it is yet to be seen how this is going to go down, but I'm glad to see people like Jesse Waters explaining all this to the wokies, the independents, the liberals, and the Democrats that do still listen to Fox News. Maybe they'll hear it for the first time and it not be a lie that's being pumped from some of their other choice stations like CNN and MSNBC. Glad to see mainstream media at least covering a little bit of this, at least giving people the opportunity to grow a little bit of common sense when it comes to, what really happened in the 2020. Now, stick around, folks. I've got some encouraging words from Steve Bannon here a little later on in the clip, and we have got a link in the description down below to a full hour-long interview Tucker Carlson had with a guy named Mr. Benz. I'll play you a short little clip of that as well. He's talking about how the government has been in bed with the media, big tech, helped create Google, and have been actively censoring America, including turning their cyber infrastructure security agency from a terrorist, looking at terrorism, cyber terrorism, to an inward look of looking at domestic terrorism, meaning people on the internet talking about COVID and the stolen 2020 election. It's a great piece, lots of information. One of the best interviews I've seen from Tucker, as far as just this guy knows his stuff, chock full of information. Go check it out, folks. It is a play-by-play of what happened to our government, what happened to our media, what happened to our cyber infrastructure, what happened to the Russia hoax turned into the threat to democracy spin, which encouraged censorship on a mass tech level, platform level, which got us to the point to where we're at right now, where it's taboo to discuss stolen elections.
Meanwhile, Wanda the Stuffer still walking the streets in Bridgeport. And Craig, who between stuffing ballots, moonlighting for the FBI, is out in Atlantic City. Johnny just talked to him.
Craig, but you know that's not right.
What's not right?
Rigging elections and using fraudulent ballots. People say you've...
I have no comment. I would appreciate if you get up and move away from me. Get out my face. I have to lay one of you bastards down.
Primetime is going to keep covering voter fraud and sloppy elections until every real vote is counted and every stuffer's behind bars. If you have a tip, text us, #fraud. Mail-ins are here to stay. It's written in the law. Democrats have embraced it. They'll abuse it to win.
Now, here's the most important part of this whole monologue, as far as I'm concerned. This is what we need to do. The Democrats are going to ballot harvest. They're going to cheat. They're going to do everything they can to stuff the boxes. And in some states where it's legal, they're just going to find people to go out and literally pay them to come up with the ballots. Republicans, as long as you're doing it legally, we need to do the same type shenanigans and legal tactics.
Republicans need to fight fire with fire. Legally, of course. The only way to win is beating Democrats at their mail-in game. Once you're in power, secure the elections. No more drop boxes, no more mass mail-outs. and cameras at every single vote counting station.
Episode 75, Tucker Carlson Network. Got a link in the description down below if you want to check it out. It's a little over an hour long. Very informative interview with Mr. Mike Benz. He is director of the Foundation for Freedom Online. He discusses how these three-lettered agencies and CISA, otherwise known as the Deep State, have captured our elections, have captured our media, have captured our internet platforms, and have actively found ways to capture people's conversation. I'm talking about censorship, folks. He breaks it all down in such a way that I've never heard it explained before. The entire time, Tucker's just sitting there with his jaw dropped, just for the wealth of information this guy spills on what's really going on, how it's so corrupted, what we can do to actually fix the problem, and how bad it really is. I'm going to play you just a couple of minutes of it, but like I said, super informative interview from this guy. He is, I guess I would say, one of the best interviews that Tucker Carlson's had as far as breaking information. Right up there with the leader of the J6 Capitol Police that was telling off on Nancy Pelosi. Here's another good one, folks. Now check this out.
The defining fact of the United States is freedom of speech. To the extent this country is actually exceptional, it's because we have the First Amendment to the Bill of Rights. We have freedom of conscience. We can say what we really think. There's no hate speech exception to that. Just because you hate what somebody else thinks, you cannot force that person to be quiet because we're citizens, not slaves. But that
Now, that's his beginning monologue here, folks, but we're going to go right to about the 12-minute mark. Listen what this guy's saying here.
Acquisition by military force. So you can no longer run a traditional military occupation government in the way that we could in 1898, for example, when we took the Philippines. Everything had to be done through a sort of political legitimization process whereby there's some ratification from the hearts and minds of people within the country. Now, often that involves simply puppet politicians who are groomed as emerging leaders by our State Department. But the battle for hearts and minds had been something that we had been giving ourselves a long moral license leash, if you will, since 1948. One of the godfathers of the CIA, George Kennan, at 12 days after we rigged the Italian election in 1948, by stuffing ballot boxes and working with the mob, we published a memo called The Inauguration of Organized Political Warfare, where he said, listen, it's a mean old world out there. We at the CIA just rigged the Italian election. We had to do it because if the communists won, maybe there'd never be another election in Italy again. So, but it's really effective, guys. We need a Department of Dirty Tricks to be able to do this around the world. And it's essentially a new social contract we're constructing with the American people, because this is not the way we've conducted diplomacy before. But we are now forbidden from using the War Department. In 1948, they also renamed the War Department to the Defense Department. So again, as part of this diplomatic onslaught for political control, rather than it looking like it's overt military control. But essentially what ended up happening there is we created this foreign domestic firewall, we said, that we have a Department of Dirty Tricks to be able to rig elections, to be able to control media, to be able to meddle in the internal affairs of every other plot of dirt in the country. But this sort of sacred dirt in which the American homeland sits, they are not allowed to operate there. The State Department, the Defense Department, and the CIA are all expressly forbidden from operating on U.S. soil. Of course, this is so far from the case, it's not even funny, but that's because of a number of laundering tricks that they've developed over 70 years of doing this. But essentially, there was no moral quandary at first with respect to the creation of the censorship industry when it started out in Germany and in Lithuania and Latvia and Estonia and in Sweden and Finland. There began to be a more diplomatic debate about it after Brexit, and then it became full throttle when Trump was elected. And what
now, folks, he starts to break it down right here, exactly how they turned these, even CISA being a new agency, fairly new agency, how they turned it from cybersecurity to domestic terrorism with a flip of a switch in the name of the threat to democracy.
little resistance there was washed over by the rise and saturation of Russiagate, which basically allowed them to not have to deal with the moral ambiguities of censoring your own people, because if Trump was a Russian asset, you no longer really had a traditional free speech issue. It was a national security issue. It was only after Russiagate died in July 2019, when Robert Mueller basically choked on the stand for 3 hours and revealed he had absolutely nothing after 2.5 years of investigation, that the foreign to domestic switcheroo took place, where they took all of this censorship architecture spanning DHS, the FBI, the CIA, the DOD, the DOJ, and then the thousands of government-funded NGO and private sector mercenary firms were all basically transited from a foreign predicate, a Russian disinformation predicate, to a democracy predicate by saying that disinformation is not just a threat when it comes from the Russians, it's actually an intrinsic threat to democracy itself. And so by that, they were able to launder the entire democracy promotion regime change toolkit just in time for the 2020 election.
I mean, it's almost beyond belief that this has happened. I mean, my own father worked for the U.S. government in this business, in the information war against the Soviet Union, and was a big part of that. And the idea that any of those tools would be turned against American citizens by the U.S. government was, I want to think, was absolutely unthinkable in, say, 1988. And you're saying that there really hasn't been anyone who's raised objections, and it's absolutely turned inward to manipulate and rig our own elections, as we would in, say, Latvia?
Yeah, well, as soon as the democracy predicate was established, you had this professional class of professional regime change artists and operatives. That is, the same people who argued that, we need to bring democracy to Yugoslavia, and that's the predicate for getting rid of, Milosevic or any other country around the world where we basically overthrow governments in order to preserve democracy. Well, if the democracy threat is homegrown now, then that becomes, then suddenly these people all have new jobs moving on the U.S. side, and I can go through a million examples of that. But one thing on what you just mentioned, which is that, from their perspective, they just weren't ready for the internet. 2016 was really the first time that social media had reached such maturity that it began to eclipse legacy media. I mean, this was a long time coming. I think folks saw this building from 2006 through 2016. Internet 1.0 didn't even have social media. From 1991 to 2004, there was no.
I tell you, folks, this guy is super interesting. Like I said, I'll leave you a link in the description below to the full clip. Just a wealth of knowledge. Explains how not only is our election stolen, how media is corrupted, people are compromised, about how big tech had been captured from their inception through Google. He breaks it all down. Just so much information, folks. If you're interested, go check it out. Definitely worth your time. Now, I've got one more clip here for you, folks. It is Steve Bannon. I thought everybody should hear this at least once. As discouraged as we were about the last election, there's a few things that Steve Bannon says that are encouraging to the fact that I believe he's right. And I heard Joe Hutton Pulitzer say this as well once before, that 2020 had to be stolen in order for us to realize just how corrupt the system was. Now, if there's any cotton to that, I don't know, but I'm starting to see that picture as well. I'm talking about a great clip from Steve Bannon. Nothing but good stuff here, folks.
If you put up the editorial this morning in the New York Post, New York Post said that they've made a fatal mistake, that the enemies of Trump have made a fatal mistake because they've made him a martyr about what happened yesterday. They've made him a martyr. He is now more important to this country than he's ever been. I said this, and I said it a while ago, and I'll back it up. Anybody wants to debate me on this, any significant person, not the Grundoons, but if you're serious, I'll debate you on the fact that Trump, for only the third time in the history of this republic, the fate of one individual is inextricably linked with the fate of this republic.
That's right.
We had it first at the foundation of the republic with General Washington. We had it again with really the foundation of a new republic with President Lincoln, and a better republic, taking us up a notch, as divisive figures often do, because President Lincoln was quite divisive until his side won. That's exactly what we're going to see here. President Trump is a divisive figure. I've never made any claim otherwise, because he's fighting the forces that would destroy this republic. And let me repeat this. President Trump and MAGA stand for the rule of law, the true blind justice, the traditional English common law as now interpreted in the United States of America, or heretofore interpreted in the United States of America based upon English common law.
Now I'm going to skip down to the 4-minute mark, folks. This is good stuff as well. Something else that he said that I thought actually needed to be said. For all those that are discouraged about voting this time, don't be discouraged. 2020 had to happen the way it did in order for us to get to this point, at least with the exposure, transparency, and maybe the one opportunity to get this ship going in the right direction.
And not just win it. After winning it, we'll be able to execute on that victory. And you should be able to see every day, have some defeats, or we have some maybe partial wins, and we're going to have some more. But if we hang together and we stay focused on what is in front of us and what must be done with clarity, in the fog of war with clarity, we'll win this. And not just win it. After winning it, we'll be able to execute on that victory. And you should be able to see every day of how they intend to run this country and run the world. That's why President Trump's victory in 2016 was providential. I was there. I saw it with my own eyes. It was providential. We had no money. We had no time. We had a man. We had a message. We had an airplane. And we had the American people in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, in Ohio, in Iowa, in all of it. They never thought he could pierce the blue wall. Remember, we were mocked and ridiculed every day by Morning Joe and all of our betters, all the geniuses, as President Trump referred to them. And we won. And in 2020, he won again. Even bigger, much bigger. But we didn't close in the transaction because it was stolen. They told us how they were going to steal it. And that has been the railhead. That has been the railhead of all this. And that was providential. Remember, they stole the first election, too, because they set up the resistance, or they set up the nullification project from the beginning. As now it's coming out, you got Matt Taibbi, you have all these people. Remember, Matt Taibbi was one of Andrew Breitbart's biggest foes now, but he's seen the light. He's become awakened. How they roll. This is not going to get easier. It's only going to get harder. The forces of the modern world, of modernity, are arrayed against you, your movement and your leader. And they will stop at nothing. There is no law that they will not break. There's no dirty trick they won't pull. There's nothing they won't do. Because their objective here is to imprison him. It hasn't been obvious in the last 72 hours. Their objective is not simply to bankrupt Trump. Their objective is to imprison him and to have him die in prison, hoping that kills this movement. And what they fail to understand because of your deep and abiding love for this country, is that everything they do only enrages us more, only makes us more committed to this cause, only makes us understand the stakes involved, and also makes us understand that there is no compromise, none whatsoever. There couldn't be starker. And that is why the steal was providential. God Almighty wanted us to see that because we were blind up until then. We were blind up until then. People still talked about Republicans and Democrats, exactly what they value. They've turned over their face cards, and it's every aspect of life. Every aspect of life. Neo-Marxist, globalist, atheist, demonic. Let's call it what it is, demonic. That's why it was providential. God's will works in mysterious ways. But remember, God's will and the Holy Spirit work through human agency. It's not some magic potion that's going to come down here. No, it works through you. It flows through you. It flows through Trump. The media hates it when I say Trump's a providential figure. Oh, he doesn't go to church. He's not Christian. He's an instrument of the living God. He is an instrument of the living God. And I don't care how many times he goes to church.
Nothing like a little Steve Bannon to get you fired up in the morning, folks. Like, subscribe, and share to Vote of Patriots. Everybody have a great day. Over and out.